Ethan Ross, a powerful but emotionally distant CEO, hires a Pilates instructor, Lena Hart, to pose as his girlfriend for one weekend. What begins as a cold transaction explodes into an unforgettable night of chemistry, scandal, and heartbreak. But when secrets surface and pride drives them apart, Ethan must fight not just for forgiveness, but for a love he never believed he deserved. Who is Lena Hart, and how did she turn one fake date into the most real connection of his life? Where are you watching from? Drop your city below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories that touch the soul. The incense-like scent of lavender hung in the air as Ethan Ross stepped through the glass door of Hardcore Pilates. The quiet room, all pale wood floors and sunlight filtering through gauzy curtains, seemed untouched by the chaos of the city outside. Lena Hart stood at the far end of the studio, barefoot on a mat, instructing a small group of women through gentle stretches. She looked serene, her voice calm but steady, her hair pulled into a loose bun. She glanced toward the door when the bell chimed and paused for only a second before returning her attention to her students. Ethan waited. When the class ended and the women left chatting and relaxed, Lena approached him, wiping her hands with a towel. Her expression was polite but slightly guarded. "Mr. Ross," she said coolly. "Twice in 1 week, that's rare." Ethan offered a tense smile. "I know this is unorthodox, Miss Hart, but I need to ask you something unconventional." Her eyebrow arched. "You don't strike me as the unconventional type." "I'm not," he admitted, "which is why I need help." He pulled out a folded piece of paper from his blazer and handed it to her. On it, in tidy bullet points, was his proposal. She read in silence, eyes scanning over each line. The offer was straightforward: $1,200 for a weekend. 1 weekend posing as his girlfriend at his sister's high society wedding at a seaside estate. There were rules, strict boundaries, no physical expectations, no overnight stays. Just public appearances, hand-holding if necessary, polite conversation, and charm. Lena looked up slowly. "This is real?" "I wouldn't be here otherwise," Ethan said, his voice clipped purposeful. "Savannah's wedding is this weekend. My mother is expecting me to bring someone. The pressure's unbearable. I just need a buffer. Someone who can smile, nod, and help me survive 2 days of relentless matchmaking and social judgment." Lena crossed her arms. "And you thought of me? Why?" "I've seen you around. You're graceful, poised, and normal. No offense. None taken, but flattery won't make this any less bizarre." "I know," he said with a sigh, "but I'm desperate. I don't have time to hire someone through an agency. And frankly, I don't want someone who will make it obvious this is an arrangement. You're grounded, unintimidated by wealth or status. That's rare." She studied him. Beneath the crisp suit and designer shoes, he looked tired, no, cornered. She remembered seeing him weeks ago at the hospital, hunched beside his father's bed in the cardiac unit. He hadn't noticed her then. But she remembered, and now, here he was, asking for help in the most absurd way possible. "I run a small studio, Mr. Ross. I'm not a performer." "I don't need a performance," he said softly. "Just presence. I'll respect all boundaries. You'll be paid in full. No one needs to know the truth." She was silent for a long moment. "Why not ask someone you're actually dating?" "Because I'm not. I don't have time. And my mother, she tends to turn things into public spectacles. The last woman I brought to a family event had to dodge questions about babies and country clubs within 10 minutes. Lena laughed, then caught herself. "This is insane." "Yes. But I could use the money," she admitted, glancing at the stack of unpaid bills on her desk. "And I guess if I can survive teaching hot yoga to real estate agents, I can survive your mother." He blinked. "Is that a yes?" "1 weekend," she said, holding up a finger. "I'm not responsible for any emotional fallout, scandal, or family drama, and I get to wear whatever I choose." "Agreed." She reached for the paper again, then looked up with a faint smirk. "You know this feels like the beginning of a bad romantic comedy, right?" "Let's hope it doesn't end like one," Ethan muttered. But deep down, something stirred. Something unpredictable. He didn't know it yet, but this was the start of everything. The coastal breeze swept across the sprawling estate as guests in crisp suits and pastel gowns strolled the marble terrace overlooking the ocean. Ethan adjusted his cufflinks, standing just outside the grand reception hall with his jaw set in quiet tension. He had survived the ride up from Seattle without panicking, but now that he was here, surrounded by legacy, prestige, and carefully curated floral arrangements, his confidence began to chip. A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. "You look like you're about to bolt." Ethan turned and froze. Lena stood before him transformed. Gone were the leggings and tied-back bun. Instead, she wore a sleek emerald green dress that hugged her figure in all the right places, the silk catching the golden hour light like waves on the sea. Her hair was loosely curled, cascading over her bare shoulders, and a delicate gold chain with a small quartz pendant hung just above her collarbone. Her makeup was subtle but striking, highlighting cheekbones and eyes that shimmered with self-assured calm. He blinked. "You. Wow." Lena's lips curled with amused restraint. "Careful, Mr. Ross. You'll ruin the illusion that you picked me for my lack of flashiness." "I didn't expect." He cleared his throat. "You look incredible. And you clean up okay yourself," she replied with a wink. "So, are we ready to lie to 100 rich strangers and charm your mother?" "I was born for it," Ethan muttered, offering his arm. Lena took it, and together they walked into the lion's den. Inside, crystal chandeliers glittered above a room that hummed with polite laughter, orchestral music, and the clinking of champagne flutes. Ethan felt every gaze land on them as they crossed the floor, not because he was Savannah Ross's brother, but because of the woman beside him. Lena glided with the ease of someone who belonged, radiating an energy that was equal parts mystery and warmth. Savannah caught sight of them mid-conversation and beamed, abandoning her friends to sweep over. "Ethan," she gasped, eyes wide. "And this must be Lena?" "Yes," Ethan said, instinctively proud. "Sav, this is Lena Hart." Savannah took Lena's hand with genuine interest. "You're stunning and brave. Thank you for coming." "Happy to be here," Lena replied smoothly. "Though I admit, I'm still learning who's who." "You're the one getting married, right?" Savannah laughed. "I like her already." As the evening unfolded, Lena moved through the crowd like water through fingers. Effortlessly adapting, subtly impressive. She chatted with Ethan's colleagues about integrative health, sparred wittily with his uncles over politics, and somehow diffused a passive-aggressive conversation with his great-aunt about Pilates being just glorified stretching. Meanwhile, Ethan kept finding himself watching her more than he should have. She was supposed to be a stand-in, a solution to a problem. But every time she touched his arm lightly while laughing or gave him a subtle cue to relax, he felt the walls around his heart shift. This wasn't part of the plan. His mother arrived late, of course, Eleanor Ross, regal in navy, flanked by two friends from the Seattle Symphony Board. She approached with the air of someone who always expected perfection and often found it lacking. "And this is?" she asked, appraising Lena in one slow sweep. "Lena Hart," Ethan said before Lena could speak. "My girlfriend." Eleanor extended a hand. "Interesting choice." Lena accepted the handshake without flinching. "Thank you, I think so too." Ethan nearly laughed at his mother's startled blink, but the moment passed. Lena fell easily into conversation, asking Eleanor about the floral arrangements, an opening Ethan wouldn't have dared use. To his surprise, his mother actually responded. Later, by the railing with ocean mist in the air, Ethan handed Lena a glass of wine. "I didn't expect you to be so good at this," he said. Lena sipped and smiled. "I'm a Pilates instructor. Half my job is managing egos while keeping people from falling over," he chuckled. "Well, you're doing both brilliantly." She looked up at him, her expression softer now. "So are you, Ethan." And for the first time in a long while, he believed it. The sun dipped lower beyond the horizon, painting the sky in strokes of rose and amber as the rehearsal dinner turned into a moonlit cocktail hour. Laughter floated through the air, champagne flutes sparkled in guests' hands, and a string quartet began to play soft jazz near the stone fountain. Ethan stood near the back terrace, momentarily alone, watching Lena speak to an elderly gentleman in a wheelchair, Savannah's grandfather on her mother's side. The two were deep in conversation, smiling. It was impossible not to admire how effortlessly she navigated the room, never overselling herself, never trying too hard. Just being. "Lena." He turned to head back inside when a voice stopped him. Well, look who's finally decided to show up with someone who isn't afraid of intelligent conversation." Ethan turned to face Nathaniel Crane, a venture capitalist, former board member, and a man whose charm often hid razor-sharp intentions. His tone was light, but his eyes gleamed with something colder. Standing beside him was Marissa Langford, a real estate heiress and longtime friend of Savannah's, who once made her intentions toward Ethan a little too obvious. "I'd say congratulations," Nathaniel continued, sipping his bourbon. "But Lena Hart, that name sounds familiar." Ethan's stomach tightened. Marissa leaned in. "Wasn't she involved in that lawsuit a few years back, with Medisynth Labs? Something about misused patient data?" Ethan's jaw clenched. "She was a whistleblower, and legally cleared." Nathaniel gave a chuckle. "Ah, yes. Still, brave choice bringing her here. You always did like to keep things interesting." Ethan didn't respond. He excused himself and strode toward Lena, pulse quickening. She deserved to know, before someone else told her with twisted intentions. But as he approached, she glanced up and read his face immediately. "They brought it up, didn't they?" she asked quietly. He hesitated. "Nathaniel mentioned it." She gave a slow nod. "I figured someone would. It was never a secret." Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Lena, I don't care about any of that. You did the right thing. You exposed illegal behavior. That takes guts." Her eyes searched his. "But your mother, your family—" "We'll handle them," he said, though a flicker of uncertainty passed across his face before he could stop it. And that was all it took. Lena stepped back slightly, not enough for anyone to notice, but enough for Ethan to feel the change. "Thanks for the heads up," she said, her voice measured. "But I think I'll head back to the guest house early. I've done my part tonight." "Wait, Lena, come on, don't do this. I'm not making a scene, I'm just recalibrating," she said, offering a small professional smile. "You said this was an act. I stuck to the script, but maybe next time, give your leading lady a little more credit." She turned and disappeared down the garden path lit by fairy lights, her silhouette shrinking until it was swallowed by the shadows. Ethan remained still, replaying her words. A slow, hollow ache settled in his chest. He had hired her to be an accessory. She had turned out to be the most genuine part of the entire event. And when it mattered most, he had hesitated. Later, back in the estate's guest wing, Savannah burst into his suite with fire in her eyes. "What the hell happened?" Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "She left. Because of you." Savannah folded her arms. "You let them humiliate her and didn't say a damn thing." "I didn't humiliate her," Ethan said sharply. "No. You just didn't defend her either," Savannah snapped. "You know what's worse than a lie? Silence." Ethan looked away. Savannah's voice softened. "You liked her, I could tell, and she liked you more than she meant to. You blew it." Ethan swallowed hard. He knew she was right. That night, sleep eluded him. All he saw was Lena walking away. All he heard was the quiet strength in her voice when she said, "Give your leading lady a little more credit." For the first time in years, Ethan Ross didn't feel in control. He felt regret. Real, gnawing regret. Back in Seattle, the rain fell steadily against Ethan's penthouse windows, a quiet drumbeat that echoed the restlessness inside him. It had been 3 days since the wedding, and Lena hadn't returned a single message. No texts. No calls. Her social media profiles were unchanged, silent, like she had folded herself neatly out of his life. He sat at his kitchen counter, staring blankly at a cup of untouched coffee, the memory of her voice ringing in his ears. "Give your leading lady a little more credit." It stung. For someone who prided himself on clarity, Ethan realized how badly he had misread everything. He had treated her like a chess piece, strategic, temporary, dispensable. But Lena was none of those things. She was real, brave, and heartbreakingly gone. In a rare moment of impulse, he left the penthouse and drove through the gray drizzle toward Capitol Hill. Her studio was shuttered. A handwritten note taped to the glass read, "Closed for renovations, reopening TBD." That told him everything he needed to know. She wasn't just avoiding him, she was disappearing. He parked nearby and sat in his car, unsure of what to do next, when he remembered the hospital. Weeks ago he'd seen her there, tucked into a waiting room chair, half asleep with a medical file on her lap. It had haunted him, even then. Now it gave him a direction. He pulled up the patient directory at Rainier General under a corporate donation login and typed her last name. One match, Hazel Hart. Oncology, long-term treatment. That night, Ethan walked into the family wing of Rainier General, bouquet in hand, heart in his throat. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as he scanned for familiar faces. He didn't see Lena at first, but he saw her sister, slim, pale, sitting upright in bed, laughing quietly with a nurse. She had Lena's eyes. A few seconds later, Lena appeared from a side hallway carrying 2 paper cups of tea. She froze when she saw him. "What are you doing here?" she asked, voice low, eyes guarded. "I came to apologize," he said, stepping forward. "To explain, to tell you I was wrong." She looked exhausted. Not angry, not emotional, just tired. "You didn't have to come here." "I know," he said, "but I needed to." She handed 1 cup to her sister, then led him out into the hallway. They stood beside a row of vending machines, between the smell of antiseptic and microwaved soup. "I didn't know," Ethan began, "that you were caring for someone. I saw you here once but didn't connect it. That's on me." Lena shrugged. "It's not something I advertise. I should have defended you in front of Crane, in front of everyone. But I hesitated, and that hesitation cost me something I didn't realize I wanted." Lena tilted her head slightly. "And what's that?" "You," Ethan said, voice quiet. "Not as a buffer. Not as a hired role. You, exactly as you are." She held his gaze, reading every line on his face like a page of a book. "You know, I agreed to that weekend thinking I could compartmentalize it. 1 job, 1 night. But I didn't expect to like you, to admire you, to hope for more." His chest tightened. "Then maybe we both didn't expect enough." Silence hung between them, heavy but honest. Lena looked away first, toward her sister's room. "I can't jump into something messy," she said. "My life is already complicated." "I'm not asking you to jump," Ethan replied gently. "I'm asking you to walk. With me. Slowly, carefully, at your pace." Lena's lips parted, unsure. Then unexpectedly she smiled. It was small, but it reached her eyes. "There's a cafe down the street," she said. "They make terrible coffee, but excellent cinnamon rolls." He exhaled, the tightness in his chest easing. "I'll take it." They walked out together into the soft drizzle. Not as strangers, not as a CEO and a hired date, but as 2 people, finally meeting halfway. 3 months later, the seasons had shifted. Seattle's sharp gray chill had given way to spring's timid warmth, coaxing cherry blossoms into bloom and layering the sidewalks with soft pink petals. Ethan and Lena strolled hand in hand through Pike Place Market on a lazy Saturday morning, dodging tourists and sharing bites of a warm apple cider donut. There was no longer anything staged about their touch. No role to play, no script to follow. What had begun as a facade had slowly, steadily become something real. They stopped at a flower stand, and Lena pointed to a bunch of ranunculus. "My mom used to grow those in our backyard," she said. "She called them ballerina flowers." Ethan bought them without a word, tucking one into her hair, earning an eye roll and a smile that still made his pulse skip. Their days had taken on a rhythm. Ethan still ran Innovex, but he'd rearranged his life to include long walks with Lena, weekend getaways, and weekly dinners with Hazel, who was now recovering well after her final round of treatment. Lena had reopened her studio with a fresh coat of paint, new equipment, and an added community outreach program funded by Ethan's foundation. She taught classes not just to affluent clients, but to women healing from trauma, illness, and burnout. The space wasn't just a business, it was her sanctuary. That night, they dressed for a charity gala downtown. Lena wore a simple navy gown that skimmed her figure like a whisper, her curls pinned back with a few delicate gold clips. Ethan stood beside her in a tailored tux, smiling at how easily she took his breath away. Still, even now, the event was a polished affair, all gleaming floors and delicate hors d'oeuvres. A familiar voice cut through the clink of glasses. "Miss Hart," said Mrs. Thompson, a wealthy donor and longtime socialite. "I understand you're a Pilates instructor. That must be such a freeing occupation, so little pressure." Before Lena could respond, Ethan turned, placing a firm but polite hand on her back. "Mrs. Thompson," he said smoothly, "Lena runs a health and wellness studio that serves over 100 clients a week. She's also spearheaded a program to help trauma survivors regain strength and balance. I'd say that takes more pressure than most corporate boardrooms." Mrs. Thompson's lips pursed. "Well then." "Indeed," Ethan said, his smile cool. "Now, if you'll excuse us, I believe they're about to announce the silent auction winners." He guided Lena away, but not before she caught the slight tremor of pride in his voice. As they reached the edge of the ballroom, she turned to him. "Thank you." "You shouldn't have to defend what you do," he replied. "But I will, every time." Later, as the evening wound down, Ethan didn't take her home. Instead, he drove out of the city, along a quiet stretch of road that opened into the hills. The sun had dipped low, casting long amber shadows over the land. Finally, they pulled into a wide clearing with panoramic views of the wildflower-covered hillsides. "Where are we?" Lena asked, stepping out into the breeze. Ethan smiled, pulling a folded sheet from his coat pocket and handing it to her. It was a blueprint of a house, a modest, modern home with large glass windows, a wraparound porch, and a separate wing labeled studio space. "I remembered what you said that night after the wedding," Ethan said, "about your dream home. I bought this land last month." She stared at him, stunned. "You what?" "And I had the plans drawn up. I want to build this for us, with a space just for you, sunlight, peace, a garden for your classes, a real home." Her hand trembled as she held the blueprint. "Ethan," but he was already kneeling, pulling a velvet box from his jacket. Inside, nestled in deep blue, was a ring, a teardrop-shaped sapphire surrounded by small diamonds like stars. "You once told me that sometimes pretending helps us find what's real," he said, voice raw with emotion. "That one night, pretending to be in love with you was the easiest part, because I think I already was." He looked up at her, steady, sure. "Lena Hart, will you marry me?" Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded, unable to speak. He stood, slipping the ring onto her finger, and kissed her under the golden sky, surrounded by wind, flowers, and the future they were about to build. No more roles, no more pretending. Just love. Honest, imperfect, and theirs. Sometimes, life writes its most beautiful stories when we step outside the script. Ethan and Lena began their journey under false pretenses, an arrangement built on appearances, carefully controlled, with clear boundaries. But what unfolded was something neither of them expected. A genuine connection born out of shared vulnerability, quiet strength, and the courage to trust. It reminds us that love doesn't always arrive wrapped in perfection or predictability. Often it finds us in the mess, the mistakes, and the moments we least expect. This story teaches us that people are more than first impressions or past mistakes. Lena's courage to be unapologetically herself, even in the face of judgment, earned her not just respect, but love. Ethan's journey from control to vulnerability showed that true strength comes not from dominance, but from humility and honesty. When we learn to let go of expectations and truly see the person in front of us, magic can happen. No matter who you are or what you've been through, you deserve a love that values your worth, respects your journey, and celebrates your dreams. And sometimes, the most unexpected people, the ones you never planned on, are the ones who change everything. Where are you watching from today? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming, life-affirming stories just like this.